powerful idea I want to talk to you about tonight is our flagship work programme, a huge employment support programme that will launch this summer to provide intensive help for the unemployed, intensive support to help them move back into work. It will be the biggest support programme of its kind seen in this country for decades, if not forever. We've not gone back through the mists of time to make comparisons, but there's been nothing like it in recent history. It will provide really high-quality support to the unemployed, something that is absolutely vital to getting people off benefits back into work, particularly those who've been on benefits for a very long period of time. I think it will be key to breaking the back of our deeply ingrained benefits culture. But more than that, the work programme also happens to be one of the best advertisements for this government's determination to decentralise power, to do less in Whitehall. The approach we're taking is nothing less than a revolution in how government thinks about solving social problems, in this case the problem of long-term unemployment and welfare dependency. Gone are the one-size-fits-all programmes. Gone are the short-term, quick and dirty political sticking plasters that use non-jobs to keep the unemployment figures down. Gone are the top-down process constraints that prevented Job Centre Plus staff from taking a flexible approach to helping their customers. All part of an agenda of pushing power, discretion and responsibility to the front line. A mechanism that will put an end to the situation where diktats from officials in Whitehall effectively dictate the nature of the services offered in the front line to our citizens, very often with little reference to the practicality of what's going on the ground. For years, trust the professionals has been a mantra for my party. Now in government, we are starting to deliver that. But that still doesn't define the full extent of the powerful idea, because actually the work programme is about much more than trusting the professionals, about much more than saying to the professionals on the ground, you design the things that work. It is the first major foray by this government into the world of payment by results. It is going to redefine the relationship between government and its contractors. Now, some of you may argue that payment by results is something that government's tried before, and to a limited extent that's true. But let me explain why what we're doing is cutting edge and radical. Government has for a long time tried to pass risk to the private sector, and indeed sometimes the voluntary sector, with varying degrees of success. The lessons of the 1970s and the 1980s was that government did not run things well, that external contractors could sometimes bring a more focused set of skills to the public sector. The original principle of PPP schemes was to enable the public sector to take advantage of private sector financial and management expertise. But the truth is sometimes government got involved in contracts that were inflexible, that were gold-plated, and other attempts to harness the skills of the private sector drowned in contractual complexity, unbelievably complex contracts that nobody truly understood. And because of that, many aspects of PPP got a pretty bad name. But the fundamental principles behind PPP remain right today, those original principles that sometimes actually the management expertise, the independence, the innovation that government contractors can bring to the public sector can really make a difference. And if we can capture the discipline of external management, if we can genuinely pass on risk to the public sector, the private sector, and if we can capture the creativity and innovation that drive successful corporations, successful social enterprises, successful voluntary sector groups, then it's an idea that has to be worth pursuing. And that is what makes the work programme different, because there's no more Whitehall-based programme design. What we're doing is we're handing a blank sheet of paper to the private and voluntary sectors and saying to them, you decide what works. And more importantly, we'll pay the bill when they demonstrate that that succeeds. Payment by results system. If they don't deliver results, and in the case of the work programme, if they don't get people back into work, then we don't pay the bill. And so a real imperative on their shoulders to deliver what works. A fundamental change of the terms of engagement. So the people who've always said to us, we're good at getting people into work, well, our message is go prove it, go and do it. If you succeed, you make your money. And actually, if you succeed in getting large numbers of the most challenged people in our society into work, you'll do extremely well. So the work programme will redefine the relationship between the Department for Work and Pensions and most of its major contractors. We're providing them with the opportunity to succeed, but it will be down to their efforts, their innovation, their skills to determine whether or not they do so. Those 5 million people on out-of-work benefits, spread across job seekers allowance, income support, incapacity benefit and its successor, employment and support allowance, not just a factor of recession, been there for a decade and more, little change even when employment has been rising. The goal that we're setting, those contractors, is to break down that culture of dependency. Of course, as I said, not all of those people can work. There are people out there who will need support, unconditional support for the rest of their lives, and they will, of course, continue to receive it. But every official and independent assessment of the long-term benefit challenge we face in this country that has taken place in recent years has expressed the view that a substantial number, that the majority of those people have the potential, with the right help, to return to work. And I think the problem was that although billions of pounds, quite literally billions of pounds, were spent on Whitehall-designed employment programs to make it happen, actually in the end it had little impact. The overall total barely budged. And that's why we want to change the whole paradigm, the way we do things. So what will happen from June this year, around 600,000 people a year will be referred to specialist providers, chosen for their potential to get people back into work, for their ability to gather together a mix of expertise to support the hardest to help. And that expertise will come from across the voluntary sector, the private sector, the social enterprise sector, large organisations, small organisations, community groups with the ability to deal with local problems, specialist groups to deal with the challenge of individual people with mental health problems, for example. Coalitions of organisations come together that we will be contracting to deliver that work. And all paid on a payment by results basis. Each consortia with the financial bedrock to carry that through, to deliver results, the freedom to do what works, but the payment by results incentive always there to drive excellence, because if you don't find excellence, you can't succeed. And so it's a regime that requires them to take a step back from where they've been before and say, right, we can do it better. Let's go and chase best practice. Let's go and chase innovation, because that is the path to success. And that's why we have designed the contracting structure the way that we have. So specialist help for those aged over 25 who've been out of work for more than a year, younger unemployed people after 9 months, those who come from the most difficult backgrounds, earlier than ever has been done before, after 3 months, they'll join the work programme. And we'll provide much quicker access to specialist support for those people who are moving off incapacity benefit and employment and support allowance, the specialist help they need, designed to meet the challenges that they particularly face. And depending on the scale of the problems in an individual's life, we will pay anything between £4,000 and £14,000 for a job outcome to get somebody into work and to help them stay there for a period of time. And what that actually means is getting them into work and making sure they stay in work for up to 2 years. So it's not just about, let's get somebody into work for a week and we get paid. It's about finding the right opportunity. And again, that extended payment period means it's no good just forcing somebody into any old job. What you have to do is to match the ability and the opportunity, the skills and the need, and find something that's really going to work for the individual. A challenge. A lot more difficult to do than the previous programs, where the money was pretty much guaranteed to flow in. We'll make a small upfront payment to the providers to get them going on the cash flow front for the first part of the contract, but the rest of the money flows in later when they've succeeded. And at the heart of all of this lies an accounting revolution for the public sector, which also makes a transformational difference. It's called rather anodyne and technically the Amy Dell switch. But what it actually means is we use the money we save by getting people off benefits and into work to pay for the cost of the programs that gets them there. And what that means is that the work program has no limits. It can't run out of money. And so therefore, the more people that get back into work, the more the state saves, the more the state invests in those programs. And it eliminates one of the frustrations that I've heard from the voluntary sector in the past. We only had so much money to do the job. We ran out of budget and we had to stop helping people into work. I mean, what kind of craziness is that? So under the work programme, no limits. But we will have some bedrocks in there, minimum performance standards, so we don't accept underperformance. You know, there is a hurdle over which you have to jump just to be in the race. But beyond that, you know, you have the freedom to innovate, our contractors have the freedom to innovate, and no limits on what they can achieve. And we've been very careful to ensure that there is no simple way of making shed loads of money by cruising along and underperforming. But there is one way you can do very well financially out of the work programme, and that is to get very large numbers of the most challenged people in our society into work. And that, to my mind, is the way it should be. I will be delighted if some of the people doing the job on the work programme for us are very successful financially by getting very large numbers of people who've been on benefits for a very long period of time back into work, transforming their lives and transforming the realities in some of our communities. It's been very obvious that some parts of Britain's welfare to work industry took a sharp intake of breath when they found out what we were doing. But the truth is, many of them have come forward to tender. We have a good range of organisations. I know that there are many small voluntary sector groups teaming up with bigger organisations in both the private and the voluntary sectors who are leading the consortia. And I am very confident, I'm expecting that when we publish the lists of bidders and successful bidders over the next few weeks, that we will see a first-rate mix of organisations delivering the changes that we're looking for. And the reality is, although we are creating a big transfer of risk to our contractors, it's not really any different to setting up any new business. You know, there are some simple basic paradigms. You get initial funds, you raise initial funds to get things going. You take the risk that you may or may not be able to build a successful business. You reach break even, you start to make a profit. Equally, in the end, you make enough money to recoup the initial cost of your investment. And then you're in surplus and making a genuine profit in what you're doing. That's the business model that almost any business in our society has to pursue. Actually, the work programme is no different. That's what this is all about. So when our would-be contractors look to the practical reality, you know, that's the way forward. It's not different. It's a transfer of risk from public sector to private sector. It's doing things in a way government hasn't done things before. But it shouldn't be a scary business model for those who are working with us. It's a well-worn path for the entrepreneurs of this country. But it is the first time the government has made all of this a condition of doing business with us. And it shouldn't be the last. And I don't believe it will be the last. And I think this is a pathfinder for the way government will do business increasingly in future. There are many other parts of government, both national and local, that can use payment by results as the way to drive the best possible service for our citizens from the companies and organisations that want to work with us. Indeed, the approach we've taken to contracting the work programme itself has created a toolbox that other parts of the public sector can use to adopt a similar approach. We have built the work programme around a framework contract, for want of a better way of expressing it, an approved suppliers list that allows other parts of the public sector to buy additional services from the organisations on our list, as long as those services relate to our core goal of improving employment opportunities and tackling social deprivation. So an example, a local authority could commit to a local payment by results scheme as a bolt-on to the work programme. For example, if there was an old industrial area with a large number of older workers, they could buy an enhanced service from the local work programme provider to deal with that particular problem, to do that bit more than they might be doing for conventional job seekers. And they could contract it quickly and easily, either with the prime contractor or with the local subcontractor or voluntary sector group in their area that is operating as part of the work programme. It has to be the future, to my mind, of offering services of this kind through the public sector, to create a flexible, dynamic approach where we offer freedom to the contractors in the front line, we create a simple contracting process, and we enable different parts of the public sector to buy enhanced services to the core contracts that we're offering. And we're already talking to other parts of Whitehall about what we're doing, about what they could do, and indeed other parts of Whitehall are beginning to experiment with the payment by results approach. The Ministry of Justice is trying this approach in a couple of prison areas to try to reduce reoffending, to see what impact that interventions of the kind we're talking about, again, funded on a payment by results basis, can actually deliver to the reoffending rates of people coming out of prison. And at heart, it's an approach that's not just about hard-nosed business, passing risk to the private sector. It is also, I think, about capturing what works in our society and bringing it to government. It's a philosophy that drives everything in reality that we're doing across government. It's pushing responsibility to the front line, handing back responsibility to heads and teachers in our schools, to doctors and nurses in our hospitals, stripping away the paraphernalia of bureaucracy that has held back so many parts of our public sector and our public services. We're pushing responsibilities down to local authority level. In 2012, we're giving local communities direct control over their police forces through the election of individually elected police and crime commissioners to oversee the fight against crime in their area. And actually within my own department, within the DWP, alongside the revolution we're trying to push through the work programme and the ending of the top-down approach, we're also trying to replicate that with the way we deal with our own staff internally. The front line of Job Centre Plus, removing the target culture, the culture of bureaucracy that has held back many of our frontline professionals, giving them greater operational freedom, giving our frontline managers additional flexibility over the budgets that they have, letting them take more decisions on a local basis, and to forge partnerships on a local basis with business groups, with voluntary sector groups. So what they're doing is delivering solutions that are more relevant to the needs of the area they operate in. The work programme is all part of that narrative of change. It needs a national framework to operate in. You can't set up dozens of individual payment by results relationships between local authorities and the Treasury, but it will not be delivered to a national template. So we'll have providers assembling teams of peoples and organisations whose skills drive down to the lowest levels, to the individual community. I'd like to see neighbourhood projects that can do such a great job at getting people into work, dealing with local social challenges, very much involved in what the work programme does. I want to capture the skills of the voluntary sector as well as to pass the risk, pass the responsibility away from the public sector. And I strongly believe we've achieved a framework that will allow us to do that. And for the broader challenge of welfare reform, if you take together the work programme, the migration of people away from long-term dependence on incapacity benefit, the introduction of the universal credit to make work pay, what we are delivering is a transformation of our welfare and our back-to-work system. But I always emphasise to people I talk to about this isn't simply a financial exercise. We all know that if we can get more people back into work, if we can break down the culture of deprivation in many of our communities, the state saves money. Of course it does. There are fewer interventions by fewer agencies. There is less money spent in the welfare system. We have a generally better environment in those communities. But actually, this is not about saving money. It's about saving lives. You walk around this country, you go to some of our most deprived communities, and it is shocking to find the deep-rooted culture of despair and hopelessness and purposelessness and directionlessness. And sometimes you go to places where it almost feels as there's a glass wall around them. I spent time in the last Parliament as Shadow Minister for Liverpool, part of the Conservative Party's outreach work to a number of cities where we are not well represented. And Liverpool is a great city. It's a very exciting city. There have been lots of really exciting things happening there in recent years. Massive new shopping centre, the refurbishment of some of its great buildings, the capital of culture, the opening of the new arena, the opening of the cruise ship terminals, new hotels, new office buildings, etc., etc., etc. Really exciting place. Vibrant business community, some great people. And you can walk 20 minutes from Lime Street Station to streets where almost nobody's working, where almost nobody's thinking of working. And it has to change. We have got to rebuild a culture of purpose and direction in those communities. And we've also got to end the situation where we have large numbers of young people growing up in an environment where there's no direction and purpose and aspiration anywhere around them. And so to them, therefore, everything that's happening beyond those glass walls is an irrelevance. It's about transforming the lives of those people. It's about changing the lives of those people. And I think that the revolution that we are putting in place through the work programme, as it rolls out in the months ahead, as we begin to challenge those who are dependent on incapacity benefit to look for something better, and then use the work programme to provide them with better support to get them back into work, I believe we can start to transform the lives of those people. Changing minds, changing attitudes is much harder than simplifying processes, changing contracts, finding innovative ways to do business with our contractors. But if we don't change, and if we don't change radically, we fail the very people who need our help the most. Many will pay the price in the form of a life lived in poverty, with the attendant poverty and life chances that passes on to their children, which is not a lot really. Only the most heartless cynic or the most narrow-minded and tribal politician could do anything but wish us well in this transformation of the welfare state. And that's why it is so good that actually the political world has unified behind this. And I pay tribute to our opposite numbers in the Labour Party who have been very open in saying, actually this is the right thing to do and we'll support it. So I believe this journey is one that we must follow, that we have to succeed in, that we must all take together. And ultimately, it's about giving back power to those who can use it wisely and well to transform the lives of people whose lives desperately need to be transformed. That's what we're all about, and that's why I hope this journey will end. Thank you.